What is up, all of you Avatar The Last Airbender fans? I hope every single one of you is having a terrific day. I actually really am. I just rewatched the live-action series again, and I know what you're thinking, I'm a little obsessed, and that's okay. But upon my last watch-through of ATLA on Netflix, I noticed a couple of things that I hadn't before. And so I thought it'd be a fun idea to dive into some of those Easter eggs today. We'll dive into some of the stuff that's more of a nod to the original series, as well as just some of the newer stuff, some of the really clever things that they did in this series. So, we're gonna dive in, but before we do, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. And if any of you actually did just click subscribe, I just want to say a yip yip to you and welcome to the channel. But after watching all 8 episodes again, I gotta say, I don't really know what was going on. This is my 3rd time watching it all the way through, but there was just something different about this rewatch. If you've been following me here on the channel, you know how much praise that I've given this show already and how much that I enjoyed it, but for whatever reason, upon this last watch through, I was just like really feeling the vibe. I don't know, something clicked for me, and like every little moment that I had problems with all of a sudden was kind of turned around, and I found myself just thoroughly enjoying pretty much everything. This time around, I went through solely with the intention of finding little things that I didn't notice upon the first couple watches, just because I was so into this show and everything was so new and everything was so surprising that I was kind of taken back, especially the first couple times that I watched these episodes. But this 3rd time around, I knew what was coming, I knew what I was getting into, and so I definitely got to analyze. But I found 15 Easter eggs that I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to start from the first episode. I'm going to start with episode 1, Aang, and I'm going to go all the way through episode 8, Legends. So, let's start with episode 1. The very first Easter egg that I found is something that I think all of us noticed right away, but it's something that was very important to me. I think if you saw my reaction of episode 1, you even saw me reciting this word for word because I was so jacked when she said it. But the first Easter egg is Gran delivering the iconic opening monologue from the cartoon. You know, there were already a couple of nods throughout like the opening credits of this first episode. Instead of Katara, you had Kyoshi giving the monologue, but you do show Aang on the mountaintop, and it's very reminiscent of the original series, but they definitely were doing things in their own way, and for me personally, like I missed that opening monologue a lot, and so when Gran starts on that, long ago the 4 nations lived together in harmony, like as soon as she says those words, you know where we're going, and although she doesn't finish the entire thing, I thought it was a very, very clever nod just to throw into the script and throw into the middle of one of these scenes where Gran is kind of describing to everybody at Wolf Cove, like, this is who this guy is, this is what the Avatar is, and this is one of the coolest monologues of all time, so what's up? But another side little small Easter egg that I saw during episode 1 is something that I paused on, and I looked at all the little figurines and statues that Zuko has of all the different avatars, and there actually is one for each avatar. If you look through it, you can kind of count it there, but I found that really cool, and it just goes to show that even like the smallest prop on set was meant for something, was meant to go towards Avatar The Last Airbender and kind of show that respect, so I thought that was very cool. But moving on to episode 2, Warriors, this is another one that I think is pretty obvious for anybody who's a big fan of the original series, especially the opening sequence, but you have Aang running into the statue on Kyoshi Island in a recreation of a shot from the cartoon. And there's a lot of different moments throughout this entire series that you're wanting more airbending, I think. I mean, at least personally, when I watch it, I'm just like, man, I just want to see like all the airbending that we possibly can, but I do love these small little moments, just showing us the air scooter here, showing us such a big part of the original series, and also the fact that they do that in this, even though it's just a funny little gag recreation of that opening shot, like, it's fun, you see Aang crash into it, he falls off, but the utilization of this, knowing that they can do this, Aang uses that air scooter a ton throughout the series, and so I'm very much hoping that we get more moments of him on that thing, on that little ball of air, because, I don't know, it's just such a cool little airbending technique that demonstrated in live action looks pretty sweet. But I really haven't watched any other creators like Easter eggs videos or looked at any articles or anything like that, just because I wanted to do it myself, like I wanted to go through the search and discovery type thing myself, and this was the one that actually made me pause the show and be like, wait a minute, what is that? This comes from episode 3, Omashu, and it's Katara and Jet. They're kind of walking through like Omashu's little urban area with all the food and the carts and stuff like that, but there's one distinct moment where you see a mask fly by the screen, and then in the background of this shot, we see the Blue Spirit mask. And I found this very interesting that in the live action, they took the time to show us where Zuko gets the Blue Spirit mask. We know that he's in Omashu, we know that he leaves and he ends up leaving, and then all of a sudden he has the Blue Spirit mask, and so I really found it cool how they show that Blue Spirit mask there. I do know that that there is an explanation. You know, it's not distinctly said in the original series, but in the novel, Zuko's story, Zuko meets this guy named Hong Shen, and he actually ends up getting the mask and the dual swords because he helped him. And so I don't know if they're taking that as canon and using that in this live action version. For me, just seeing it in that market, knowing that Zuko is in Omashu at that time, it was kind of a nod of like, okay, Zuko probably picked up the mask there, but maybe not. Maybe some way, somehow they end up saying that he got it from Hong Shen in like season 2 or something like that. I don't know, but I did find just the fact that you can see the blue spirit mask in Omashu. I found that so freaking cool. A friend of mine on X actually pointed out, he commented back when I posted this on there, he said the swamp episode had a similar Easter egg. I had never noticed that. That kind of blew my mind just knowing that there is another shot in the original series. What I'll say about that, though, is that takes place in season 2, whereas this takes place before the episode masks in here. And so, I don't know, for me, in this live action, it just kind of means that he got it there. But anyway, the next Easter egg I wanted to talk about is Iroh getting the White Lotus tile. They make this one pretty dang obvious, I will say, but as a casual viewer or somebody who hasn't seen the original series, you don't know what that tile is. You just kind of see him pick up this thing, and then he leaves it as a marker for Zuko to find him. But the Order of the White Lotus is a really big deal in this show. I'm very curious how it's all going to play out. I'm very curious how much they're going to show and how much detail they're going to go into it. It's such an interesting curveball to throw into this story late in the game of like this secret society of like these higher up people that come together, and they've always kind of been lurking in the background. They come together. Like, I think it's really fun. I just don't know how into that they're going to end up getting in season 2 and 3. You kind of feel like they have to. They at least have to acknowledge it, and then they play a pretty prominent role in the battles. And so I definitely think they're going to build them up, and I think this is a small hint as to all of that coming. Personally, I would like to see it play out even a little bit more in depth, because they're important before this. They've had a hand in a lot, but then even after this, Aang ends up ordering the White Lotus to find each new avatar and train each new avatar. And if they end up doing a live action Korra, they're going to be there. They're going to be watching over Korra, helping train her. So, I mean, I don't know. It's pretty important, and I do find it maybe more interesting that they show that tile than some other people do. But next, and from episode 4 Into the Dark, we have the Flopsy statues. And obviously, everybody's depressed that we didn't see an animated Flopsy. There's been a lot of talk about the budget for this show, but we got Nyla, we got Momo, we got Appa. Like, couldn't we at least get Flopsy, maybe? But for those of you who didn't catch this, during Boomy's real introduction, when he's talking about the tea and the pine bark and he's spitting it out and throwing it on the ground, there are statues behind him. We start that scene with a close-up of one of these statues, and it's basically an homage to Flopsy, his pet goat gorilla. And Flopsy's just this creature that comes off very intimidating but ends up being very adorable, and I hope that we get some Flopsy in the future, but at least they gave us a nod towards him. But next, and this is another key moment in this series, it's in episode 4 again, Into the Dark, and it's when Katara finds her satchel, the satchel that she uses for waterbending the most, and she uses it on Jet for the first time. For me, this was a very powerful moment because I was like, yes, dude, she's got the satchel. Like, that's basically her weapon. Like, she carries that everywhere. Sokka has his boomerang, Aang has his life, and Katara has her satchel, and it's a moment that flies by very quick. If you look down at your phone or anything like that, you can miss it, but just know in the future, if you see her with that satchel, that's the moment that she got it. But there's actually a ton in Into the Dark that I found, so stay with me here. The next one is the nod to Kangaroo Island. At the meal that Aang and Boomy are having together, Boomy says dark short ribs from Kangaroo Island, which is a quick reference of the moment that Aang says he's from Kangaroo Island. And it's basically the same moment in the original series when they're sitting and they're eating with Boomy, but it's just kind of a very quick, slight nod to the original series, and even just the dialogue makes me happy hearing that. Kangaroo Island is also a real island in Australia, apparently. I've never been. I looked this up, but it's pretty cool that that's a real place. And also, if you're wondering, there are no earthbenders there. I looked that up too. But the next nod, and this is one that I was very much looking forward to and curious if they were going to go this direction, but Into the Dark, the rock candy, or the stone's name, Genomite, I believe it's called, or Creeping Crystal, as you might know it. But in the original series, Katara and Sokka, they're trapped in this stuff, and at the end, he's like, don't worry, I mean, it's not even dangerous, it's just rock candy. And he takes a bite of it, and it's just very classic Boomy. And in this, they give you a little moment with Boomy eating the rock candy, and that just makes a guy happy. But next, and this is kind of across all of the episodes, specifically coming from Into the Dark, we have the musical cues and Leaves from the Vine. The moment with Iroh sitting at Liu Ten's funeral and Leaves from the Vine playing. It's just a tough moment, but a really sweet moment. Takashi Furukawa, the composer for this show, did such a solid job of incorporating that stuff. Obviously, I think that theme is going to come in a little bit later. It's going to come back into play, and we're going to get a little bit more in depth on Iroh and all of those feelings losing his son. But I found what they did in this episode with the Earthbender that he's talking about his brother that he lost in Ba Sing Se, and then the mirroring with Iroh with Liu Ten's funeral, and then Zuko in the end saying, do you need a friend? All of that is super emotional, but also back to the musical cue side of things, I just want to highlight all of it throughout this show, because if you make a live action adaptation, I think that they very well could have just done things completely differently. I would have understood that because they're trying to stand on their own, they're trying to do their own thing, but everything from the Fire Nation theme, the ending credits, like when it goes into that at the very end, you get that same feeling that you did at the end of every single Avatar: The Last Airbender episode, and I'm just so happy they kept a lot of that stuff. Same with the original Avatar theme, the da 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 da. That theme is just so iconic, so recognizable. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, they say that they're doing a new Harry Potter series, like a television streaming series on Max. Can you do a Harry Potter series without the original composed theme by John Williams? I don't think you can. And I feel the same way about Avatar now after watching this live action adaptation. Like, I'm very happy he took the route that he did, and he didn't just decide to completely switch things up and go for a completely new, because moments like Little Soldier Boy, Leaves from the Vine, it hits so hard, man, because we all know what that is. Those emotions come through for us, and it's just like, man, oh my gosh. So big props to the composer, and I just wanted to highlight that a bit. But moving on to Spirited Away, and the next one, we have the moment where Sokka is talking to a little girl who he finds in the forest. I actually love some of this little dialogue that comes through, but I believe he's asking if the doll has a name, and the doll doesn't, and so he's like, how about Bonzu Pippin Paddle Opsicopoulos III? And this is a solid little nod to how they get into Omashu in the first place, them going up to the Earthbender guard, and Aang has like the little wardrobe to get up on, acting like he's an old man, and he uses that name, but the name is iconic, and the fact that Sokka used it in this situation was a lot of fun. But next is another moment in Spirited Away when Zuko and Iroh are in that bar. They come in asking for information about the Avatar, and some guys in the bar said that they heard from pirates that waterbenders who were with the Avatar. And if you've seen the original series, you know that these pirates, that's where Katara got the original waterbending scroll, so just a small little nod there. But there's also all these little fun moments within the original series that they still call out throughout the show, and the second part of this is something that I found very fun. The guy sitting in the bar said that they heard it from pirates, but they also heard from a canyon guy, and this canyon guy said that Avatar and some waterbenders fought off some canyon crawlers, and that's a very iconic episode. I love all of that. I wasn't sure if they were going to do the Great Divide or not. Obviously, they decided not to. It's such a strange episode anyway. It doesn't have much to do with like the through plot, but just hearing that Aang, Katara, and Sokka were on that adventure, like off in the distance, and that took place at some point in this, that's just so cool. Like, it makes you look at the show a little bit differently, knowing that these characters, they did that. Like, they went through that adventure already. I don't know. I love that. But then also in Spirited Away, we see a bit of blue flame from Azula. She's training with this instructor guy, and she just will not stop, and it pushes her all the way to the edge where all of a sudden, like, her hand ignites fire, but then it goes blue a little bit, and you're like, ah, there it is. Blue flames are iconic for Azula. That's her signature. That's her signature flames. Obviously, we see her do a little bit of lightning later on, but just that hint of blue, I'm very excited now for Season 2 and Season 3, knowing that that's coming. We've now seen her build herself up, get Ozai's attention, and be able to go off into the world and kind of do her own thing and claim the power that's hers. And so I just feel like in Season 2, they're going to make Azula so freaking powerful. She's going to be unstoppable, and Elizabeth Elizabeth Yu's performance so far has been so great. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And Flamey Hotman. But next is from Masks, episode 6. And this is talking about the Mother of Faces and the statue that Roku presents to Aang when they're having their conversation. And we find out that this is Ko's mother. Now, the Mother of Faces is a really important character, specifically in the comics. You don't hear about her in the original series, but she debuted in The Search, a trilogy of canon graphic novels that took place after the series finale. Apparently, she played a pretty pivotal role in that story. If anybody out there has read those graphic novels, please feel free to kind of enlighten us down in the comments. If you have any more information on this, I'd love to hear from you. Personally, I haven't read those, but just looking into it a bit, and something that got me excited is, you know, in this first season, we saw Ko take a much bigger and larger role than he was ever supposed to play, right? Ko the Face Stealer is just a small part of the kind of climax of the original series of Book 1 Water. But in this, he was given a lot of importance, and knowing that this is his mother, it's a statue of his mother, and kind of just getting that small introduction, I don't really know if that means anything. It could be like a subtle hint towards them maybe using her in the future or something like that. I don't know. But I did find it interesting, and after looking it up, this part has a lot more significance than I think I gave it upon the first watch. The first time I went through, I was kind of like, okay, so Aang gets his statue, he goes back, and it's over. Like, there's not going to be like this huge fight. I don't really know what I was expecting, but now watching it, I see the importance, I see the significance of that, him trading that for his friends and showing that Ko has this vulnerability when it comes to family. All the stuff with Avatar Kuruk in the end, there's just a lot going on there, and so again, I just think that this statue plays a more prominent role than I think any of us really realize, and I think that it could end up coming back with how they've done things so far. But next is from episode 7, The North, and this is definitely one where I may be reaching a bit, so forgive me here, but Pakku is talking to Katara about water, and he says water is the element of change, and then in the very end, in Legends, he's having another conversation with Katara, and he uses that same word, change, talking about how he's kind of come full circle, he's understood that he was wrong and stuff like that. But just the word change, I see it as a nod to Avatar Korra, The Legend of Korra, and Season 3, or Book 3, change. These scripts oftentimes are pretty airtight, and words aren't just used for any reason, and so I found it very specific that they're using change for water. It has a lot to do with that specific element, but I do like to picture just a little bit of Korra involved in that decision making. So yeah, guys, but the last one is pretty anticlimactic, but I went through all of them in order. The last one is just something that I noticed that I found kind of interesting. It's Zhao when he's talking about when he was talking to the Fire Sages, he was getting information at Roku's temple, and he mentions lion turtles. And again, kind of like the canyon crawlers, referencing the Great Divide there, lion turtles, even hearing that this early on, is for a reason. The lion turtle in the original series very much comes out of nowhere. Maybe you hear about him a time or two before the finale, but the significance that the lion turtle plays in this universe is massive. It is kind of the end-all lesson for Aang. He's the Ancient One, the master of energy bending, you know what I mean? And so I find it really interesting, as well as just important that that's mentioned there. It's kind of discarded by Zhao in that moment. He's like, freaking lion turtles, like, I don't even know what we're talking about. I need something better than this. But it's important. But there are so many other little things, little details and Easter eggs within this show. I'm definitely going to go through it again because, like I said earlier, after this last rewatch, I've become sort of obsessed with it. But please, I'm sure there's stuff that I didn't notice, so let me know down in the comments if you caught anything that I did not see, because I would love to hear it. I would love to see it. I really enjoy all the little specifics, and this is just the stuff that makes fandom such a fun thing to be a part of. So let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments. As always, I read every single comment that comes in. Also, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you stuck with me this far, hit subscribe. I have a goal going right now. I'm trying to get to 15,000 subscribers. I'd really appreciate it if you help me get there. This YouTube channel means everything to me, and your guys' support means even more. But don't forget to smash like if you're an Avatar fan. Click on another video because I have plenty. You can follow me on X at JonesVibesOnly, and don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But with how many Easter eggs there were in Season 1, can you guys imagine how many are going to be in Season 2 and Season 3? It's just an exciting time to be an ATLA fan.